Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee with Derek and Craig. It's a little show that we put together for the morning drive or whatever, about a half an hour long, maybe longer. You know us, we run long a lot of times, but we usually try to pick out a topic for the morning. And I was thinking about it this morning. I figured we start talking a little bit about gain and discrimination settings on your metal detectors. It's something that's really important, especially if you're trying to get the most out of your detector and not have a lot of, sometimes you run that gain up too high and it's essentially going to be distorting and stuff like that, the signals you get, or the ground may not be able to handle it. And, Craig, I know Craig's used so many different detectors and stuff, but that seems to be the one. Between gain and discrimination, those are the two that are probably the most important actual settings on your metal detector, other than ground balancing, which we talked about a few days ago. And Craig, what are your thoughts on the gain or the RX gain, depending on which detector you have? It's listed out several different ways. Essentially, it's sensitivity in a way.
Yeah, I don't know. In the old days, we used to crank everything as high as we could, but we didn't have the power that the machines do nowadays. Mm-hmm. And I know, with the Blitz tool, it's so powerful, you can't crank it up. You got to kind of balance the gain and the discrimination. And, I was looking at a technique that some of the British are using. They do it on the dais, and I've seen it on Equinox now. It's a Winkler program where they're trying to get through real, iron nails and all kinds of trash, iron trash that's in the ground mask and stuff. And they're going on, they put the sensitivity really high on it.
Right.
And you go real slow, and it kind of knocks the iron out a bit by using the discrimination that high. I guess it makes the iron sound bad, I guess.
Right.
Or worse. But I've gone over, like my yard. I've used all kinds of different settings, and my yard is so busy, it's unbelievable. And it seems like the settings I got now that I'd gone over the yard for about 2 years with the Bliss tool, the Deus, 3 Bliss tools, the Deus, and I think the Nautilus. And I was not finding much anymore. So when I got the Equinox, I started taking it out, and I started finding stuff next to big iron, really nice buttons, eagle button, right. A flat, dandy button, big token and stuff like that. And it was in the area right behind my back door, and just this little small area of my yard that I'd never really found anything there. And the EMI was really high, which that's affected by the sensitivity and the threshold. The higher you got the threshold, then it starts acting erratic, and you get all this noise.
Yeah, false.
You want to keep. I think the main thing with is keeping the machine stable. And if you've got like falsing going on, it's going to be hard to hunt. If you're hearing, you want to listen to the. If you're especially in a place that's been hit a lot, you're listening for small signals. Very deep
very
signals,
weak.
Actually.
Yeah, weak.
Yeah, and they're not going to come back as good. And if you got the machine running real high and it's in a busy spot, it's gonna drive you crazy. I mean, you got to have patience, but at the same time, if you got that stuff too high, I dropped everything down when I went back. I started thinking different settings with Bliss tool, and I kind of mimicked what I was doing with the Equinox, and I was running wide open with the Equinox, accepting iron down to -9, and that's what kind of unmasked some of those targets. They were like, one of them was next to a giant chisel, weighed about a pound, and There was another one that was like there was a dandy button right between a knife, iron knife, and a I don't know, some kind of iron piece of iron that was fairly big, and it was kind of both of the pieces of iron were actually touching the button, which was amazing to me. But I went back out and lowered the Bliss tool has a depth discriminator, and using an iron, you run the discriminator high, to kind of knock out the iron. But I started accepting more iron, and also my yard has got a lot of coal and stuff in it, so I started running auto ground balance instead of manual, and that's kind of mimicking tracking on the Equinox, which is what I was running. And what was the other thing? And I ran the gain down lower, so I could run the threshold higher without having it falsing.
Okay,
I was able to pick out a bullet and an Indian head penny in my front yard that none of the other machines even heard. I mean, and they were banging signals. I mean, I couldn't believe it. This one bullet was like maybe 9 inches deep, and it was just,
right,
just a banging signal. And I'd been all over that front yard because that part of the yard had the most coins, and I also found Civil War and colonial buttons and stuff in that yard, in that part.
Well, we also have not to cut you off at all, you can continue on, but Gavin McGregor has a question about the Equinox, and he heard the same thing you did. I know you know the answer to this, Craig. He said, ask Craig, what's the go with ground balancing the Equinox? They say you could set it to 0. That's foreign to me. I'm in my ground, which you've already said. Go ahead. Sorry.
That's a controversy, and I've been seeing a bunch of guys. I've been on some of these Equinox things on Facebook, and people ask about ground balancing, and then some guy will just put out a comment. Just set it to 0 and go. You don't have to ground balance. And there's a guy. There's a guy, Clive Klutnick, that's from your country that. I think he's Australian, and he's done like 30 books on metal, on machines and stuff. And I bought his book on the Equinox, and he in the book he says one of the most important things, and he's right, is ground balance.
Absolutely, the first thing you said.
if you go in, if you look at some of the videos and what Mind Lab recommends. They recommend you do tracking, and that is the best because it's constantly tracking the ground. And if you're in bad ground, the ground can change and get worse, or get a little bit better, And if you're in neutral ground, it just basically is all neutral. You're not, not having to worry about it as much. But why not give yourself the best chance by using the tracking? I think
Well, I think too, Craig,
that's why I kind of did it with the Bliss, with the Bliss tool too, because I figured, that tracking's working really good. Because I did a lot of stuff with the Equinox that the other machines missed. But then I started thinking, what if I try some new settings? But you can ground balance this machine like 3 different ways,
But you're ground balancing too, Craig, with Equinox or anything. The ground balancing, you're trying to knock out the ground itself so that the metal detector ignores the ground, and depending on how much iron mineralization you have and stuff. Like Gavin, you're in Australia, and there's probably several spots in Australia. I would think because there's gold fields and stuff like that, you have a lot of black sands. It's a mineralization. And you want to ground balance your machine or put it on auto track because
they have a place over there called the Golden Triangle that has produced gold forever. I think it still is. I was looking at one one thing a while back that people still find ounce and half ounce nuggets at this place.
Right. Yeah.
But they're all using GPXs, and pulse machines, and
well, it goes along with gain and discrimination also, where I think that they're getting, whether this was just a comment the guy made about the zero ground balance or whatever, there is situations that will work on with the bliss tool, and I'm assuming that it would work on the Equinox and other detectors, and that's in wet salt sand, like on the beach in the wet salt sand. I think somebody should try with an Equinox, just for giggles, go out there and set your ground balance to zero, because essentially you're not just dealing with iron mineralization on a beach, you're dealing with salt. That's another mineral. So you're adding another thing to the spectrum right there. And with the bliss tool metal detector, that's what I came up with, and it took me a while. Even the maker of the detector didn't know about it. Setting it to zero improved the machine being stable, and it also goes along with the gain. And guys, remember that gain in good ground, regular soil, you can probably set it. You can set your detector a lot higher in dry ground. Now, when you add moisture, soil moisture, or whatever, an EMI into that equation, you need to lower your gain. In a lot of cases, depending on which metal detector you use, because you have to remember, these newer detectors are a lot more powerful. Even the bliss tool is, so much more powerful on the gain part of it compared to other detectors, that when we get into really soggy soil, like it just after a rain or whatever, we have to back down the gain, because you're punching that power into the ground. It's like your stereo system in your car. You crank it up too loud, it starts distorting. That's kind of the same way gain is. When it hits that ground, if you have it too high, you're actually it's forcing that detector, forcing that signal into the ground, and it's not penetrating all the way and comes back, and essentially it's distorting your tones, the stableness of your detector. And that's one of the most important things is setting your detector up as a whole is to keep it stable. You don't want a bunch of noise, a bunch of racket, because you're going to miss signals, you're going to miss whisper tones, you're going to miss these items that would normally come through that you'd be able to hear with your headphones, through your headphones, and make it easier for you to find stuff. And ground balancing goes along with that too. We call it being chatty. Your threshold. A lot of your older detectors, even some of the new ones, you have a hum in your ear with that threshold as you turn it up. And when you get above that point, right at that point where it starts to make noise when you're adjusting your threshold upward, it's a good idea to leave it right there, and that way stuff pops through. If you turn it up a little too high, it confuses you, because you're hearing. It's so sensitive, it's picking up these little bits and bobs, these little specks and mineralization and stuff like that. And it's not going to enable you to hear tones clearly. You want to hear the nuance in the tone. And that's, like with the bliss tool, it's a single tone machine. It doesn't have multiple tones, but in that single tone, I can tell you the difference between iron and silver, or brass and silver. And a lot of people can, as they use that metal detector. And now the new detectors that are coming out, that have come out, like the Equinox, the Quest, and some of the new Deus stuff, there is nuances in these detectors in the tone, even though it's digital sound. And that's another thing, Craig, that affects it. Analog sound versus digital sound. And some of them are taking analog sound and spinning them into digital sound. It's weird. We'll have another show on that, because it's another deep topic. Gavin's saying, that was his thoughts, Craig, and he normally sets a tracking, because the devil ground here is always changing. Not sure about the beach with zero ground balance, but I'm thinking that will only work in an ideal situation or ideal settings. Not many places like that over here. And Gavin's on chat, guys. You guys can get onto chat too,
Yeah,
just by going to the
with
website and clicking
with
on
the
comments.
Equinox, you can run that thing, in the salt. You can actually, it'll balance to the salt water. So, it's I'd see a guy named he calls himself Gig Master, and he's down in South Carolina, and he does a lot of beach hunting and a lot of shore hunting along the ocean there, and colonial sites. He digs some really cool stuff, but he's actually taking this thing, scuba diving down in the water. I've seen few people doing it,
right?
And one guy was using Excalibur. Now he's using the Equinox, because he likes the different tones and the meter. But this Equinox has really done well. It's a good machine.
Well, this stuff too, Craig, applies to any metal detector too. With the Equinox is probably the best new metal detector out there that's come out in the last year or two. They do have other programs and stuff for the Deus also. They have that new Deus, essentially a different model, but in these new ones, it's like not uncharted territory, but it's a lot more. They're a lot more versatile. They allow you to adjust this stuff. Now you can go and turn these machines on out of the box and go on presets and stuff, but as you use them and as you get used to your detectors and what they sound like, what the tones are like, what the nuances are like, that's when it's time to step outside the box and start messing with your own settings, because they have these things set up essentially so anybody can turn on and go. It doesn't mean they're the most ideal for your area. It just will work in your area so you can get a handle on what that detector's doing. Every detector's different. I mean, you can't just buy an Equinox and use it and get good with it and turn right around and buy even the same brand, like a CTX 3030. If you bought one of those from MindLab, the same things are not going to apply. The detector is not going to act just the same as the one you have already. There is a learning curve to every metal detector you put your hands on. Craig and I have been using so many detectors over the years that we're not used to it, but we're ready for these changes, and we recognize them very quickly. I do a lot of testing with metal detectors and how they work and what the best settings are for certain situations that I'm in, and I'm able to come up with ones that work very, that help you along. And we put a lot of them up on, or we were putting a lot of them up on Hardcore Metal Detecting Facebook page, and we talk a lot about it on the radio. And this is important for anybody, for a beginner. Maybe you just started metal detecting, or an experienced hunter, because we're always learning new stuff. As an experienced hunters, I think it's you never know everything. You're always trying to put new stuff together, new settings together, new styles together to make your hunting experience the best that you can be. I mean, Craig, I hear it so many times. It's almost like. Some people say, "Oh, I know I'm the best with this detector." Yeah, you are. You may be the best in your area with the detector. Yeah, it's here nor there, because it depends on the person. I've seen guys do stuff with bottom end detectors, like low end detectors, that would blow other people's minds. It blows my mind sometimes because of the settings they're using. They're getting such good performance, and it's consistent. If you get into a spot and you're able to ground balance, the gain setting and the discrimination setting and the sensitivity settings are very important, especially if you're having problems. There's certain things you can turn down, like the RX gain or gain, to make your machine more stable. Discrimination is another one, Craig. I see guys, and it's up to you what you're hunting for. If you're a coin shooter and that's all you care about is finding coins in a park, yeah, you can run your discrimination up higher. But if you're a relic hunter, you're looking for whatever is non-ferrous, and non-ferrous is your silver, gold, copper, brass, lead, and your ferrous material. Here people talk about ferrous material is your iron. So, sometimes they'll put so much discrimination, but they're only looking for coins which are high conductors. It's going to be higher on the meter, so to speak, and it's going to allow the detector just to pretty much hit those and null out anything lower, like pull tabs and stuff like that. There's certain situations you need to do it with, but don't, I would say don't crank that stuff up so far. If you're on a site that doesn't have very many targets, they may be deeper, and discrimination will, cut back on your depth. Anything you move up higher as far as discrimination goes, or recovery delay, if you move that up too fast, or it doesn't give the detector time to get down that far to give a signal back, to signal, to put the tone in your ear. And with discrimination, if you turn it up too high, then you're essentially losing depth, because that detector's going down and it's trying to discern an iron nail or a pull tab from a quarter. And at depth, a lot of the detectors, they only have a certain depth that these kind of things work in, especially your meters, the ones with a meter machine. Yeah, and an example of this is if you had a White's Spectra V3, it has a nice screen, has a lot of adjustments on it, but if you bury a quarter at 12 inches down in the ground and use the stock double D coil and go over it, and you look on your meter, it may not give you quite a great signal, but if you look on your meter, it's reading into the negative range, which means ferrous, an iron target, even though it's a quarter. And if you move that discrimination too high, your detection depth is cut in half or whatever. It's definitely reduced. It's kind of like the threshold too. I mean, you turn your threshold down too far, where it's so silent that only targets like 5 inches down come popping through. The rest of the stuff, a detector knows it's there, but it can't give you a reading on it really. It's a fine line sometimes. You want to keep all the depth you can, but still have a stable metal detector. And you want to knock out nails. Obviously, if you're hitting a lot of square nails or a lot of just regular nails, roofing nails, whatever, in an area that you're hunting, you'll see it come up on the Equinox, or if you have a screen machine, you'll see those numbers come up, and you can kind of bet on in a way that that's probably going to be iron and stuff. You can notch out that stuff, and a lot of detectors have that, where you can notch out certain things. But I wouldn't say, if you're in the middle of a farm field or an old house site that the house has been torn down or whatever, you don't want to miss any of that stuff, because buttons and lead and gold and like aluminum pull tabs, they all read lower. They're lower conductors. Especially like pull tabs and nickels read up about the same. You don't want to miss the nickel. But if you're in a pile of pull tabs, I could see where you'd want to notch those out a little bit, or at least turn it up just high enough where the nickel will come through pretty good, and the pull tab will start to spit or break up a little bit when you run the coil over it. And this is kind of deep, but I mean, it's stuff that you have to think about, stuff that we think about as relic hunters, because we want everything. I don't care if it's a chunk of brass, because it could be a plate, it could be a breastplate or something like that down 10 inches down the ground. I don't want to miss that. I don't want to pass that up, because that's a really cool find. But you may dig other brass items, brass pipe, brass whatever, and that's okay. I mean, I always had a saying on the beach: if I have to dig 10 pull tabs to get one gold ring, well, by God, you put me on and let me dig the pull tabs. It just depends on the situation, how much discrimination you use, and understanding that in some ways, all these settings work together. On a good metal detector, they all help each other to a certain extent. When we talk about the bliss tool metal detector, definitely everything works together. You have 3 different kind of discrimination settings on the bliss tool. You have the gain and threshold work together, and the silencer and the frequency. All these things you can adjust to make that detector will literally get a 30-inch silver dollar. I've seen it go through 25 inches of mineralized rock on a quarter. And these are extreme tests and extreme situations, but the ability for that detector to do that is really unheard of. Really, every detector has its really strong points, and I don't know if you've tried it yet, Craig. I'm very curious, and I think somebody said it would work, where you can discriminate out a hot rock and put an item on top of a hot rock and get it with the Equinox. I think I saw that, but they never said whether they can go through the hot rock. See, the Ballista will do that too, and I think those are the only two. I think the Quest did it. The Quest Pro did it. I'm sorry, and I tried that and I put it in a video where I was able to put a Civil War bullet under a big chunk of hot rock, which is a mineralized rock, and the detector would go right through that hot rock and get the target. That's extremely hard for VLFs in the past to do, but apparently the newer ones, and I'm assuming that the Equinox will do it also, only because the Quest did, and it's kind of they're the newer stuff, Craig, the newer circuitry, the processors and stuff like that. We're dealing with a whole new realm of detectors, Craig, in the last 10 years. I mean, they are so different electronically and the kind of parts they use compared to what they were in the 90s and the early 2000s.
I think that the one that really kind of pushed it was about 7 years ago or so when the Deus started getting popular.
Right.
And that is created. That's made MindLab better. MindLab.
Right.
They kind of set back and they weren't doing a whole lot. And I talked to a lot of guys in Europe, and MindLab before Deus was the top machine. They had rallies, in England and stuff, and it was like 9% E-Tracks and Xterras, I believe. But and they also had a repair center, I think, in Ireland, and supposedly it was really good service, and they'd go the extra mile on people's detectors, to help them out.
Right, which is
all
good.
Of a sudden, all of a sudden they took the center away, and the customer service just went into the pits. From what these guys are saying, it went from excellent to terrible.
That's a shame.
And I heard this, even before I, got the Equinox, that the customer service had really picked up.
Good.
And I think that was one of the, the machines are very expensive to get fixed too. They're not cheap.
Yeah. I mean, like Craig, we dealt with that too. When I was fixing, working on these detectors and stuff, that people don't have the time that it takes to find problems, the parts that you need to get. It's most places. I mean, and I don't blame them really. I mean, sometimes it's $100 to get your detector fixed or more. We never charged anybody, but that was part of our good. I felt Craig and I both felt like it was part of the good customer service part of it, to do whatever we can to make. I don't know. It sucks when your metal detector doesn't work. Okay, especially when you have a hunt coming up or something like that. And it used to frustrate me when I couldn't find the problem right off the bat. I'm not an electronics guy, but I learned how to work on these detectors by going to Bulgaria and working with the owner of the company and stuff. But I still don't know what I'm looking at when I look inside these machines, because I don't understand diodes and circuits and computer chips like some of these guys do. That work on these machines, but I understand the basics, where the trouble points are on there. And I've had it happen a couple times where, I had a heck of a time with one detector trying to figure out what the heck was going on with it, and it turned out to be an actual circuit on the board. And, this is a very, most of these detectors, there's so many micro solders and stuff like that for a newbie, so to speak, and, well, not a newbie, but somebody that's just starting out working on electronics that doesn't have much experience, you're using multimeters and oscilloscopes and all this stuff to find the problem. And it's second nature to the guys that usually do maintenance on metal detectors, like at MindLab and stuff. but to do this, it's really hard. But the customer service part of it has to be there with any company. White's has always treated me really good in the past. I used to be a White's guy. I had MXTs and DFXs and all that. And I really liked White's, the way their customer service is. And I hope it's still the same. I haven't heard different. But, with MindLab, I heard that about them. And then, they picked up, Thesauro was always good. They always had a lifetime warranty. And I think somebody else is taking that over or honoring that. It's really important from a
customer service is a big deal. I mean,
yeah.
It's like with cell phones. Apple goes the extra mile with their customer service. I remember Steve Jobs said, if you don't have satisfied customers, you really don't have a business. And you got to cherish your customers and take care of them. And make them feel special. And it really works. I mean, nothing more frustrating than you're paying almost $1,000 for a detector, and then something goes wrong, and then all of a sudden they hit you up with another bill on it. I had that happen. With the Explorer, I had to pay like $500 to get this thing. The one that Mike gave me, it broke, and he said, I'll give it to you. And I'd send it in to get it fixed, and it cost me like $500. And this was like, early 2000s. That was an expensive machine back then, but that was probably the most expensive machine I'd ever had. At that point, I think back then, probably the next most expensive machine I'd had was the, White Eagle Spectrum. I think I paid around a little under $600, but I got it wholesale.
Yeah, I think I had the mute. I think I had the mute button on a little bit there, guys, and I'm sorry, I can't remember if I bumped it now or whatever, but I was just saying the customer service is very important, and you get it from a lot of companies. I hope I didn't just mute that whole thing out. That was my fault hitting the
You got to get
button.
rid of that mute button, man.
Oh, I hate it because I'm trying to text back to Gavin on chat, and me walking and chewing gum is a hard problem to have. But we're about the end of the show there. I wanted to keep these things about 30 minutes. Like Craig and I talked, that was a good time to do that. But guys, do check out our Hardcore Metal Detecting Facebook page. And I was talking last night about some of the other Facebook pages. It's Dirt Pirate Detecting. That's Barb's Facebook page. And I'm sorry, Barb, if you're listening out there, that I messed up the name of your Facebook page. I don't know why. I've been looking at it for years. But, they have a lot of information on there, too. Adventures in History by Mark Hoover. I mean, there's a lot of good Facebook pages out there. Craig tries to share over as much as he can the memes and other posts and stuff on our Hardcore Metal Detecting Facebook page. And you guys are welcome to post up on there if you have questions or you want to hear about a certain topic for the morning, what have you. Feel free to do that.
Or if you have a YouTube channel and you got to, you want to kind of promote it a little bit, that's fine too.
Yeah, I mean, we always try to do that too for you guys too. If you have an event or something like that that you want to, get the word out on, we'll do our best to talk about it on the show or mention it on the show, what have you. That's never a problem. I mean, we're all like-minded, and we're all regular guys, gals that are doing this. Even if you're a younger person there and you're making videos, we don't care. I mean, if you put out a video about metal detecting, let us know. But we'll put it up on our Hardcore Metal Detecting Facebook page just to help you out a little bit, maybe get you a few more subscribers, and get the information out of there. I mean, that's what we're all about.
Everybody's always looking, people are always looking for a new channel, to watch, and I'm constantly looking for cool channels to watch, but it's that's part of the fun is having a YouTube channel and showing off your stuff. That's the great thing about the internet. We didn't have that years ago.
Right.
The only way you could see it is go to the guy's house.
Exactly. Well, we'll get off of here, and guys, enjoy your coffee. Be careful at work and everything. If you're working today, Gavin, it's probably 11 or 12 o'clock at night now there in Australia. And Gavin, get a good night's sleep, brother. Have another beer though before you go to bed. That's always a good idea. But and I'm sorry about the mute thing if that came through there and you weren't hearing me there. I try not to make those mistakes, but hey, I'm a regular guy. I make mistakes. So, but Craig, I'll talk to you in a little while. And matter of fact, guys, don't forget about our show that we have on Saturday night. That's our regular show, Thursday nights and Saturday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can listen to us not only on Spreaker, but we're on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Tunes, iTunes, or whatever. We're on a lot of different formats there. So be sure to like and follow us on those formats so that we know that you're out there and which ones you're on. I think we're on a couple dozen formats right now, and we're trying for a few more. Just a regular show that, we really have no set way that we set up the show or format of the show. It kind of takes its own path most of the time on Thursdays and Saturday nights. We don't even know what we're going to talk about half the time as far as metal detecting, but it always seems to work out pretty good, and it's usually, I think, pretty interesting, Craig. At least that's what we're being told. So we're spontaneous, and we don't script anything, really. I mean, I can't remember a time where we really sat there and did that. We may start off with a topic, but we have no idea where it's going to end, which makes it exciting and adventurous, I think. So thanks for listening. Be safe driving out there if you are. And if you're not working today, get out there. Keep digging. God bless.